The most powerful financial system on Earth does not appear on any balance sheet. It has no shareholders, no quarterly earnings, and no public audit. Yet for decades it has quietly reshaped governments, markets, and wars. That system is not a bank. It is the CIA's black. The CIA was never designed to win wars on the battlefield. It was designed to move money where law could not follow and convert that money into leverage. On paper, the CIA is an intelligence agency. Analysts report satellites classified briefings. In reality, it operates as a shadow financial architecture funded by money that does not officially exist and spent without democratic approval. Every institution is limited by oversight. The CIA's defining advantage was that its funding escaped it. When money is removed from scrutiny, it stops behaving like currency. It becomes power, flexible, deniable, and fast. That power financed coups without declarations, elections without ballots, and wars without budgets. It flowed through offshore accounts, proxy forces, shell organizations, and covert channels designed to leave no fingerprints. This system did not emerge by accident. It was engineered through legal ambiguity, emergency authority, and Cold War fear then preserved because it worked. Over time, secrecy stopped being a temporary measure. It became the operating model. The CIA did not simply collect intelligence. It built a parallel economy, one that functioned outside public accountability, while influencing outcomes inside sovereign states. This is not a story about spies. It is a story about how hidden money becomes global control and why, once financial power escapes oversight, it rarely returns. In 1945, the United States emerged from World War II as the world's dominant industrial and military power. Its factories were intact, its currency was strong, its army unmatched. Yet Washington faced a quiet weakness. America had won the war without understanding the world it was about to lead. Wartime intelligence had been handled by the Office of Strategic Services, a temporary agency built for a single enemy. When the war ended, President Harry Truman shut it down. In peacetime, a permanent intelligence service felt dangerous, even un-American. That hesitation quickly faded. As Europe lay in ruins and the Soviet Union tightened its grip across Eastern Europe, power took on a new meaning. It was no longer measured only in tanks and factories, but in information influence and anticipation. The United States had no permanent institution capable of delivering any of them. The solution came in 1947 with the National Security Act. Officially, it reorganized the military and created the National Security Council. Quietly, it established the Central Intelligence Agency. The language defining the CIA's authority was brief and deliberately vague. The agency could perform such other functions and duties related to intelligence as the National Security Council may direct. Those words imposed no limits. They defined no methods. They required no transparency. From the start, the CIA was legal presidentially authorized and structurally insulated. It answered upward, not outward. Its mandate was flexible by design, able to move faster than legislation or public debate. At this stage, nothing was illegal. The CIA was not yet rogue. It was a legitimate tool for a new kind of conflict. But embedded in its foundation was a critical flaw authority. without clarity. And once power exists without clear financial boundaries, one question inevitably follows: who pays and who gets to see the bill? In 1947, Europe was not only broken, it was vulnerable. Cities lay in ruins, industry had collapsed, millions were hungry and displaced. In that vacuum, ideology moved faster than aid. For Washington, the danger was not humanitarian failure, it was political contagion. Poverty created opportunity, and the Soviet Union was ready to seize it. The response was the Marshall Plan. Publicly, it was an unprecedented economic rescue. Over 4 years, the United States sent more than $13 billion to rebuild Europe food fuel machinery infrastructure. It was framed as generosity, stability, and recovery. But embedded within the program was a quiet financial shift. A small portion of Marshall Plan funds was diverted into covert channels. Roughly 5% was redirected to intelligence operations. No public debate, no explicit authorization, no receipts. For the CIA, this was transformative. For the first time, the agency accessed large-scale funding that looked legitimate on the surface, yet could be spent in total secrecy. Money approved for reconstruction became money used for influence. Those funds flowed into European politics, supporting friendly parties, bribing officials, backing labor unions, and shaping media narratives before elections took place. Nothing illegal was required. The money had already been approved. National security justified its use. Oversight was minimal. Results were immediate. This was the moment secrecy became systematic. The CIA learned that open money could be converted into hidden power as long as the transfer remained invisible. Financial opacity stopped being a liability. It became a strategic advantage. The Marshall Plan rebuilt Europe, but it also normalized a dangerous principle that democratic money could be separated permanently from democratic visibility. By the early 1950s, the CIA no longer needed to justify its existence. It needed to prove its effectiveness. The funding channels were in place. The legal ambiguity was secured. What remained was demonstration clear evidence that covert power could achieve outcomes faster, cheaper, and with less political cost than open military force. The breakthrough came in 1953 in Iran. Using a relatively small pool of covert funds, the CIA executed Operation Ajax. Politicians were bribed. Newspapers were paid to manufacture outrage. Street mobs were quietly financed to create the illusion of spontaneous unrest. Military officers were incentivized to switch loyalty at the critical moment. No invasion, no declaration of war, just money, information, control, and timing. The elected government collapsed in days. Inside Washington, the lesson was unmistakable. A democracy could be overturned at a fraction of the cost of a military campaign. The return on investment was extraordinary. This success transformed covert action from a contingency tool into a repeatable business model. In Guatemala, the same mechanics were reused. In Indonesia, attempted again. Across Eastern Europe, quietly tested. Each operation followed the same financial logic. Small, deniable budgets. Proxy actors who absorbed the risk. Plausible deniability for policymakers. Failures were buried. Successes were rewarded with more funding. What made this phase dangerous was not a single coup, but standardization. Overthrowing governments became procedural. Covert action was no longer reactive. It was planned, budgeted, and evaluated like an investment portfolio. Crucially, Congress never voted on these outcomes. The public never debated them. The financial cost appeared negligible, but the long-term liabilities were invisible at the time. By normalizing regime change as a low-cost instrument, the CIA institutionalized a form of power that bypassed both diplomacy and democracy. Money moved faster than law. Outcomes arrived before accountability. At this stage, the CIA was no longer operating in a gray zone. It had crossed into something more dangerous, a system where financial efficiency justified political destruction, and success itself became the rationale for expansion. By the mid-1950s, the CIA faced a structural problem it could not fix with money alone. Its human networks were compromised. Soviet intelligence had penetrated early operations so deeply that entire missions collapsed before they began. Agents were captured, turned, or killed. Trust in human intelligence eroded. For an organization built on secrecy, this was an existential threat. The solution was not reform. It was technology. If people could be infiltrated, machines could not. The CIA pivoted away from deep cover espionage and invested heavily in engineering. The result was the U-2 spy plane, a high-altitude surveillance platform capable of photographing enemy territory beyond the reach of Soviet defenses. It was expensive to develop but cheap to operate compared to the cost of failed human missions. This marked a fundamental shift in financial logic. Information was no longer extracted through risky networks of agents. It was collected at scale repeatedly with predictable costs and measurable output. Intelligence became capital-intensive rather than labor-intensive, and that made it scalable. That same logic carried into Southeast Asia. In Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, the CIA fused technology with proxy warfare. Surveillance identified supply routes. Covert air operations moved weapons money and personnel. Local militias were funded to absorb casualties. Official budgets stayed clean, while real costs were pushed into classified ledgers. The money did not always come from approved sources. Opium fields were protected in exchange for loyalty. Heroin trafficking quietly financed operations that could never survive congressional scrutiny. Airlines operated by front companies moved both weapons and narcotics under the same logistical umbrella. From a balance sheet perspective, the system appeared efficient. From a strategic perspective, it was corrosive. Technology reduced visibility, but it also reduced restraint. With fewer American lives at risk, operations expanded. Decisions accelerated. Accountability weakened. The war seemed manageable until it wasn't. By the late 1960s, the hidden costs surfaced. Proxy forces fractured. Funding streams destabilized regions. What had looked like a low-cost, technology-driven strategy produced long-term liabilities no model had priced in. Technology had replaced humans, but it had also detached power from consequence, a pattern that would define the next phase of covert finance. By the late 1960s, the CIA's problem was no longer capability. It was containment. The systems built for foreign intervention, black budgets, deniable funding, flexible authority, were never designed with hard borders. Once secrecy proved effective abroad, the temptation to reuse it closer to home became inevitable. Quietly, the line was crossed. Under the justification of countering communist influence, covert funding began flowing into domestic spaces. Student organizations were subsidized, cultural institutions were steered, journalists were nudged, media outlets received quiet support to shape narratives favorable to U.S. foreign policy. None of it was debated publicly. None of it appeared in transparent budgets. From a financial perspective, the logic was consistent. If influence could be purchased cheaply overseas, why not domestically? The most extreme expression of this mindset was Project K Ultra. Funded through hidden allocations and front organizations, the program pursued a radical goal control of the human mind. Researchers experimented with LSD hypnosis, sensory deprivation, and psychological stress, often on unwitting subjects. There were no receipts, no consent forms, no meaningful oversight. Money moved through academic grants hospitals and research institutes disguising intelligence operations as science. Financial opacity made ethical boundaries irrelevant. As long as funding remained classified, consequences remained abstract. This phase marked a critical transformation. The CIA was no longer just bypassing foreign governments. It was bypassing its own society. What made this possible was not ideology alone, but structure. Classified funding insulated decision-makers from public reaction. Programs could expand without review, persist without proof of success, and terminate without accountability. Eventually, fragments of the truth surfaced. Investigations followed. Hearings exposed abuses. Careers ended. But the system itself survived. Because by this point, secrecy was no longer an emergency measure. It was embedded in the institution's financial DNA. Once power learns, it can operate without borders, geographic or moral. It rarely stops on its own. It stops only when exposure becomes more expensive than concealment. By the late 1970s, the CIA's financial system had grown too complex to remain invisible forever. Vietnam had ended. Public trust had collapsed. Congressional investigations exposed illegal surveillance, secret wars, and uncontrolled spending. On paper, oversight tightened. Budgets were restricted. Lines were drawn. In practice, the system adapted. The Iran-Contra affair revealed how far that adaptation had gone. Officially, the United States did not negotiate with terrorists. Officially, Congress had banned funding for the Contra rebels in Nicaragua. Yet weapons were sold to Iran, an enemy state, at inflated prices. The profits were quietly diverted through offshore accounts and shell entities, then funneled to the Contras. This was not a failure of controls. It was a demonstration of financial workarounds. Money moved through intermediaries, foreign banks, and cutouts designed to fragment responsibility. No single ledger told the full story. Each transaction appeared defensible in isolation. Together, they formed a shadow supply chain that bypassed law entirely. The scandal exploded in public view. Hearings followed. Officials were indicted. The system appeared exposed. But exposure did not dismantle the infrastructure. It forced it to professionalize. That infrastructure found its perfect partner in BCCI, the Bank of Credit and Commerce International. BCCI was not a traditional bank. It was a global laundering machine. Drug money, arms, profits, intelligence, slush funds, and dictator wealth all flowed through its accounts. For the CIA, BCCI offered what domestic channels could no longer guarantee: anonymity at scale. Operations in Afghanistan, the Middle East, and Latin America were quietly financed through BCCI's web of shell companies and correspondent accounts. Funds left no fingerprints. Oversight dissolved into jurisdictional confusion. When regulators finally shut BCCI down in 1991, the damage was undeniable. Billions had moved unseen. Governments had relied on criminal infrastructure. Yet the core lesson was clear. The problem was not scandal. The problem was dependency. Once covert power depends on hidden finance, to function, exposure becomes a temporary setback, not an ending. The system survives by finding new channels, new intermediaries, and new justifications. And by the time the Cold War ended, that system was already preparing for its next evolution. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. The red flag came down over the Kremlin, and with it disappeared the CIA's defining justification. For nearly half a century, the Cold War had provided clarity. There was an enemy, a framework, a reason for secrecy and scale. Every black budget could be explained by one word: containment. When that word lost meaning, the system built around it began to drift. Inside Langley, the victory felt hollow. The KGB, its mirror rival and benchmark, was gone. Intelligence budgets were cut. Overseas stations closed. Long-running networks were dismantled.
Welcome to the team.
Experienced officers retired without replacement. For the first time since its creation, the CIA faced an uncomfortable question. What is covert power for when there is no great adversary? Washington turned inward. The Clinton administration prioritized trade growth and globalization. Peace dividends were expected. Intelligence was no longer the center of national strategy. It was a background function. But the financial machinery did not disappear. It idled. Without a unifying threat, covert funding became fragmented. Resources were spread across loosely defined dangers: rogue states, drug cartels, regional conflicts, isolated extremist groups. None justified the scale of the Cold War apparatus. None commanded sustained political attention. This created a structural blind spot. The CIA remained optimized for state-to-state conflict, large budgets, and centralized enemies. What it struggled to track were decentralized networks, fluid non-state actors who moved money, people, and ideology through informal channels rather than formal systems. Warnings existed. Osama bin Laden appeared repeatedly in intelligence reporting. Training camps were observed. Financial trails were partially mapped. Opportunities to strike emerged and were deferred. The threat did not fit the existing cost-benefit logic. Without a clear enemy, urgency faded. Without urgency, investment lagged. The black budget still existed, but it lacked direction. Covert power without purpose became reactive rather than anticipatory. This was not a failure of intelligence collection. It was a failure of strategic imagination. By the end of the 1990s, the CIA still possessed global reach, technical tools, and financial opacity. What it lacked was focus. And in that gap, a new enemy was organizing quietly, patiently, and far outside the assumptions of Cold War finance. The system had survived its old war. It was unprepared for the next one. September 11, 2001 ended the CIA's period of uncertainty in a single morning. In hours, the agency regained what it had lost after the Cold War: a clear enemy, unlimited political backing, and access to funding on a scale not seen since the 1960s. Fear replaced hesitation. Urgency overrode restraint. The black budget did not just return, it exploded. This time, the strategy was different. Large-scale invasions were expensive, slow, and politically visible. The CIA needed tools that were faster, quieter, and easier to deny. The answer was a new operational triangle: money drones and data. Budgets surged into classified programs. Surveillance expanded across continents. Intelligence collection shifted from isolated reports to continuous streams of information signals, metadata movement patterns, financial traces. The objective was no longer to understand the enemy's ideology. It was to map their networks. Drones became the centerpiece of this system. Unmanned aircraft eliminated the need for risky ground operations. They could loiter for hours, collect real-time intelligence, and strike instantly. A pilot sitting in Nevada could kill a target in Pakistan. The financial logic was compelling. No casualties, minimal political fallout, predictable operational costs. Killing became transactional. Targets were added to lists reviewed through classified processes and removed with precision strikes. Each operation generated data footage signals, confirmations that fed back into the system, refining future decisions. At the same time, data analysis became central. Financial records, phone calls, travel logs, and communications were fused into operational intelligence. Patterns mattered more than names. Probability replaced certainty. From a budgetary standpoint, this was efficiency perfected. From a strategic standpoint, it marked a shift with lasting consequences. War was no longer episodic. It was continuous. The CIA no longer waited for threats to mature. It sought to neutralize them preemptively, anywhere on Earth, without declarations or timelines. Oversight lagged behind capability. Legal frameworks struggled to keep pace. The agency had not simply returned to relevance. It had reinvented itself as a permanent, data-driven strike apparatus powered by money that flowed faster than law could adapt. The black budget was no longer just funding operations. It was sustaining an endless war. By the early 2010s, the CIA faced a new limitation. Drones could strike, budgets could scale, surveillance could collect almost everything. But information alone was no longer the bottleneck. The problem was interpretation. Billions of data points, calls, bank transfers, travel records, metadata drone feeds flooded intelligence systems every day. Human analysts could not keep up. The risk was no longer missing information. It was missing meaning. This is where the next transformation occurred. Through its venture arm, In-Q-Tel, the CIA backed a small Silicon Valley company with an unconventional promise software that could connect data the way analysts could not. Its name was Palantir. Palantir did not gather intelligence. It integrated it. Financial transactions, communication logs, location data, and operational reports were fused into a single analytical environment. Relationships that once took months to identify appeared in minutes. Patterns emerged where none were visible before. Suspicion became probabilistic. This marked a shift from intelligence as collection to intelligence as prediction. Targets were no longer identified solely by informants or intercepted messages. They were flagged by behavioral anomalies, financial irregularities, and network proximity. Risk scores replaced narratives. Algorithms suggested who mattered before humans asked why. From a financial perspective, this was transformative. The cost of processing intelligence dropped dramatically. The speed of decision-making accelerated. Operations became scalable in ways human-centric systems never were. But the trade-off was profound. As AI-assisted analysis spread, accountability thinned. Decisions increasingly relied on models few fully understood. Bias embedded in data became operational reality. Errors propagated faster than they could be audited. The CIA's power now rested less on secret funding and more on information dominance. The ability to see connections others could not, and act before those connections were publicly visible. This was no longer just covert action. It was systemic advantage. The battlefield was no longer defined by geography. It was defined by data sets. And in a world where whoever controls the data controls the outcome, intelligence agencies were no longer merely responding to history. They were shaping it quietly, algorithmically, and at scale. Money had built the system. Technology had accelerated it. But data had become its most decisive weapon. Today, the CIA operates in an environment more complex than at any point in its history. The tools are stronger, the budgets are larger, the visibility is deeper, and the margin for error is thinner. The agency is once again embedded in proxy conflict, providing intelligence targeting support and operational guidance in Ukraine. At the same time, it is recalibrating for a far more formidable rival. China is not an insurgent network or a collapsing state. It is a near-peer power with advanced manufacturing, AI surveillance, cyber capabilities, and global financial reach. This is not a replay of the Cold War. It is a systems confrontation. The CIA's current advantage lies in integration money data, cyber operations, and allied intelligence fused into a single decision-making pipeline. Actions are faster, signals are richer, predictions arrive earlier, but complexity compounds risk. As systems scale, failures scale with them. A flawed dataset can mislabel intent. An algorithmic bias can elevate the wrong target. A covert financial channel can destabilize markets before policymakers understand what moved them. The black budget still provides speed and deniability. But in an interconnected world, deniability decays quickly. Financial markets react in milliseconds. Information leaks propagate instantly. Proxy conflicts spill across borders without warning. Oversight has not disappeared, but it lags capability. Legal frameworks struggle to define responsibility when decisions emerge from distributed systems, private contractors, and automated analysis. When outcomes are produced by models, accountability becomes diffuse. This is the core systemic risk. Not that the CIA acts in secret, but that secrecy now operates inside systems too complex to fully audit in real time. The agency has survived by adapting money to machines, machines to data. Each transition increased efficiency. Each reduced friction, but efficiency is not the same as stability. In a world where intelligence, finance, and technology are tightly coupled, a single miscalculation can cascade across domains, military, economic, and political, before corrective action is possible. The CIA remains powerful, but power operating at maximum speed inside opaque systems carries a different kind of danger. Not collapse from weakness, but disruption from precision. The CIA did not gain power through secrecy alone. It gained power by removing friction from money, from decisions, and from accountability. What began as a legal response to post-war uncertainty hardened into a permanent system. Funding slipped beyond oversight. Technology reduced human limits. Data replaced judgment. Each shift made covert action faster, cheaper, and harder to restrain. The question is no longer whether this system works. History shows that it does. The real question is what happens when it works too efficiently. Today, intelligence, finance, and technology are tightly fused. Decisions made in classified systems can move markets, destabilize regions, or escalate conflicts before public institutions can react. Speed has become the new source of risk. The CIA is not unique. Governments and corporations are building similar architectures, opaque, automated, optimized for advantage. The difference is mandate. The CIA operates in the name of security, but the systems it uses increasingly shape outcomes far beyond any single battlefield. The black budget still exists, but its most dangerous feature is no longer secrecy. It is integration. When money, data, and decision-making merge into a single machine, power stops waiting for permission. And in that moment, control no longer depends on intent, only on momentum.